Now take leaders' questions, and I call on Deputy Charlie McConlough.
Finally yesterday, the truth of the government's cut to students with special needs became clear when the National Council for Special Education announced that the 42,500 special needs students will have their allocation of resource teaching hours cut by 12% at the start of the new school term. This means that children with autism, severe emotional disturbance, severe learning disability and assessed syndromes will see their special teaching hours cut by half an hour per week, from 4¼ hours to 3¾ hours, starting in this September. This will be over an hour and a quarter less per week than the same student received in 2011, a 25% reduction overall. Similarly, students availing of special needs assistance will see their allocations cut by 10% from September, with many losing their allocation to a designated special needs assistant. On the back of increasing student enrolments in our schools, 42,500 students will need resource teaching hours this September, up from 38,500 last year, while 22,000 students in our schools will need special needs assistance, up from 20,000 last year. This increased student enrolment is being recognised by the government for mainstream students who don't have a special educational need, through the hiring of 450 additional mainstream teachers at primary level and 450 additional mainstream teachers at secondary level in order to maintain standard pupil-teacher ratios. My question, Taoiseach, is why our students with special educational needs, why they are not being treated in the same way by hiring the extra resource teachers necessary and the extra special needs assistants necessary to ensure that they do not have to endure cuts. Why is it that the government are targeting their drive for savings in education at the most vulnerable students in our education system?
Thank you, Deputy. I call on the Taoiseach.
Lascan Corla. First of all, neither the financial allocation for special education needs nor the personnel allocation for special education needs is being reduced. The financial allocation for special education needs in 2011 was 1.3 billion. The allocation in 2013 is 1.3 billion. The numbers of resource teachers is currently 9,950. That has not been reduced. The number of special needs assistants is 10,575, and that is not being reduced. If you look at the totality of our education system, there are currently about 59,000 teachers in the education system, 32,000 of those at primary level, 27,000 at post-primary level. Of those, 9,950, as I said, are resource teachers or learning support teachers. In addition to that, there are 695 teachers in special classes and 1,078 teachers in special schools. So in other words, there are in total 11,700 teachers whose sole function is to support children with special educational needs. In addition to that, there are 10,575 special needs assistants. So in other words, if you take 5 mainstream teachers, for every 5 mainstream teachers in our education system, there are 2 people between special resource teachers, learning support teachers and special needs assistants who are specifically dedicated to working with children with special needs. Now, what has been happening is that the numbers presenting for special needs assistance and the numbers presenting for resource teachers has been increasing. The increase last year, for example, was an increase in the order of about 10%. What the Minister for Education is doing is the National Council for Special Education has, first of all, published a very detailed policy advice as to how the resources should be allocated. And that's the first time that the allocation system has been looked at in detail for about 20 years. Schools are being encouraged by the National Council for Special Education to look at the way in which the resource is being used, to use, for example, team teaching where that is possible, to ensure that individual teachers, children do not see any actual reduction in the resource hours provided. In addition to that, the Minister has asked the National Council for Special Education to establish a working group to immediately begin developing a proposal for a revised allocation mechanism for learning support and resource teachers. And the aim of that new mechanism would be to ensure that learning support and resource teachers are targeted at those schools and children who need them most.
Margaret, 1 minute for a supplementary question from Deputy McConnell.
Thank you, Alaska Hurla.
Silence, please. Order.
Thank you, Alaska Hurla.
Look.
Thank you.
No,
Thank
sorry,
you.
Deputy McGrath. Deputy. Oh, this is leader's question. This is Deputy. Deputy. This is I've called Deputy McConnell. Resume your seat, Deputy. This is leader's question.
This is a very serious. There's a very serious issue.
I'll deal with that later on. This is leader's questions, right?
There's a very serious issue. There's a very serious issue, Alaska Hurla. This.
No, look. Please resume your seat. I'll deal with that later on.
This is a very.
This is leader's question.
This is a very serious issue, Alaska Hurla.
I'll deal with that after this leader's question.
Thank you. Thank you, Laskin Corda. I think this is a very serious issue, and it requires the attention of every deputy in this House. Unfortunately, Taoiseach, from your response there, I think you have shown that you don't have a clue as to the impact that this is going to have on special needs students from this September. Nowhere in your response have you acknowledged that this is going to lead to a half-an-hour reduction for almost every student in receipt of special teaching hours starting in the new Dáil term. If, Taoiseach, we were to apply your logic to the pensioners of this country, for example, and say that because there are now more pensioners and the budget is staying the same, unfortunately every pensioner in the country will have to take a 12% cut from September, nobody would agree that that wasn't anything but a cut. In relation to mainstream students, Taoiseach, your own government is increasing the number of teachers in the system this September in order to ensure that there isn't cuts on standard pupil-teacher ratios. Why aren't you applying the same logic and giving the same treatment, fair treatment, to students who have special educational needs? It defies logic, and it is. It defies logic. It defies logic, and it is entirely indefensible. Minister Quinn.
Question, please, Deputy.
Minister Quinn, who is sitting beside you, has in the past admitted to mistakes and indeed corrected them. When he targeted GESH schools, disadvantaged schools, in a previous budget, he admitted that he didn't understand the impact the cut would have, and he apologised and subsequently reversed.
You're over time, Deputy. You're over time, so
yes, I will finish. In relation to student grants, he apologised to students for the mistakes that have been made. What I'm asking you here this morning, Taoiseach, is to admit that this is a mistake, an indefensible mistake.
Thank you, Deputy.
Don't try to defend it, and instead I request and ask that you give a commitment to the House here this morning that you will go off with your Cabinet colleagues, and particularly with Minister Quinn, reconsider this measure and ensure that from September no special needs child is targeted as part of your drive to get savings in the education budget. Thank you,
Taoiseach.
Well, first of all, even in these very difficult financial circumstances, this government committed to ring-fencing the finance that's available for special educational needs, and we have done that. The allocation. No, that's. No, please don't abuse language. Please don't abuse language. The allocation, the money that is available, for special educational needs in 2013 is 1.3 billion. That is 60% more than was available or was allocated in 2007 at the height of the boom. The numbers of special needs assistants and the numbers of resource teachers have not been reduced. The National Council...
Please, deputies. Look, Deputy McConnell.
Please.
Deputy McConnell. Please. No.
The National
Taoiseach has the
Council...
floor, please. Taoiseach.
The National Council for Special Education, whose job it is to look at the way in which those resources are allocated, have come forward with a policy proposal. It's the first time in 20 years that the way in which the resource is allocated has been looked at. It has come forward with policy advice as to how the resource is used. Among that, for example, is the idea of team teaching, of better use of the resource, and the Minister for Education has established a group to look at the allocation of the resource so that the money that is available and the numbers of resource teachers, special needs assistants, special teachers that are available, that they are deployed to meet the needs of those who need them most. As I've said, the government's commitment to special educational needs cannot be doubted. For every 5 teachers, for every five teachers in the entire first level and second level educational system, there are 2 people between resource teachers and special needs assistants who are dedicated to assisting and to working with children with special needs. The issue here now is to make sure that that allocation and that resource, which is very considerable, is used to best advantage, and that's why the Minister for Education has asked the National Council for Special Education to apply itself to the allocation of that resource. The money has not been cut. The money has not been cut. The numbers of special teachers have not been cut. The numbers of special needs assistants have not been cut.
I now call order, please. I now call Choctaw Pádraig McLaughlin. We have 2 minutes, Deputy.
Taoiseach, in the foyer of these houses, we proudly display the 1916 proclamation, and you will know well one of the main lines in that proclamation, that we cherish all the children of the nation equally. That a decision yesterday announced by the NCSE, and Minister Quinn was nowhere to be seen yesterday, good that he's here today, flies in the face of that pledge. The latest cuts of 25% in real terms since 2011 are absolutely shameful. And I can't understand this, because every single TD, every single parliamentarian in these houses has interacted with parents and with families and with carers of people with disabilities. How can we continue to keep standing over cuts like this? What are we talking about here? These are cuts to children with autism, with speech and language difficulties, with multiple disabilities, with severe emotional disturbance, with visual or hearing impairments. How come it is children like this, it is vulnerable people who pay the price of austerity? People watching these debates know that the very wealthy got bailed out, and they take the hit. So how can you possibly stand over this type of decision? I'm asking you, because, Taoiseach, I believe that people in this House come from different political backgrounds, but fundamentally we're decent people. We listen to people who are carers, people who are struggling out there. I'm appealing to you to reverse this decision. Don't present it in some Orwellian fashion that the budget is the same as it has been last year. You know that the numbers of students have increased. More money needs to go into this. I'm appealing to you to have this decision reversed and do the right thing.
Thank you, Deputy. Taoiseach.
Well, I mean, the exaggeration continues. We're up to 25% cut now, according to Deputy McLaughlin. Let's get the facts right, first of all. There is no cut. There is no cut in the allocation. There is no cut. There is no cut in the allocation of money for special educational needs. The government has ring-fenced the funding that is available for special educational needs, and for very good reason, because the government is committed to providing for the needs of children with special needs. Secondly, the numbers of teachers who are dedicated to working with children who have special educational needs, that has not been cut. The number of special needs assistants who are dedicated to working with children with special educational needs, that has not been cut. Those numbers are being protected. The issue is that the numbers of children presenting in schools for special educational needs resources, that is increasing. And that is why the Minister for Education has asked the National Council for Special Education to look at the way in which this resource is allocated so that it is used to best effect. For 20 years, Deputy, nobody looked at the allocation. That's why he asked that it be looked at, to see that the considerable amount of money that is being dedicated to special educational needs and the considerable number of personnel in the educational system that are dedicated to special educational needs are going to where they are most needed, and that it is used in the best possible way within the schools. I think that that is reasonable. I think it is reasonable that after 20 years, when this was not looked at, that the Minister would get the National Council for Special Education Needs to look at how this resource is used within our schools, and to develop a way in which the money and the personnel that are dedicated, which is considerable for special educational needs, that they are used to the best advantage of the children who need them.
Margaret McLaughlin, 1 minute.
Taoiseach, you've got to reflect on this. This is Orwellian stuff. We're all getting emails from teachers last night across this state and principals describing very, very clearly the impact, the real impact in their schools for the children involved. You know, this is defending the indefensible. I'm going to read from your manifesto. Labour will support schools, parents and children with special educational needs by ensuring that necessary supports follow a child from primary to second level and achieving greater integration of special needs related services. And you were spot on when you said that. And you need to honour this. I was on a panel last year, Disability Federation of Ireland, and I put out an offer of a pledge called a threshold of decency, that every political party would subscribe to no more cuts to disabilities. What citizen out there would agree that we should cut services to children with disabilities, to parents or carers? That was the offer, and this government have not accepted the offer. I'm going to put it to you, stop the Orwellian language, the nonsense. Let's be realistic here. The fact is that there are children going to be going to school in September, and there are going to be schools trying to cope with less support in terms of those disabilities. We've seen a presentation recently in terms of parents with Down syndrome. In Donegal in recent days, all of the various deputies from different parties seen parents telling what it means to be a parent of a disabled child, what it means to have those resources and supports. Now, I'm appealing to decency here, because I think we're decent people in these houses. Let's reverse this decision. Don't hide behind the NCSE. Do the right thing and reverse the decision. And please don't get up again and try to defend the indefensible.
Thank you, Deputy. Taoiseach.
It's not the indefensible. As I have said, if you take 5 teachers in our education system, for every 5 teachers, no, let's hear the answer now. For every 5 teachers in our education system, right across first level and second level education, there are 2 people, in addition to those 5 teachers, who are specifically dedicated to providing supports to children who have special educational needs. It is a very sizable commitment by any standard. That number has been protected by this government. There has been no reduction in that number. Secondly,
Alex, no. Please, Taoiseach to reply.
Secondly, the amount of money that is provided for special educational needs has not been reduced. There is not a cut in the money that is being provided. But it makes sense. It makes sense.
Please, Deputy.
It makes sense that we look at the way in which that resource is being used. For 20 years, that was not done. The National Council for Special Education has looked at the way in which that resource is being used. They have come forward with ideas and with proposals, and the Minister for Education is working with them on that to make sure that the resource that has not been reduced, that the number of people who are working in this area, which has not been reduced, are working to the best advantage of the children who need them. That's what makes sense. This is about making sure. This is about making.
Deputy, please, no, please. Please, look, Deputy, Taoiseach to conclude. Sorry, Taoiseach to conclude. Deputies, please.
Two things.
Stop, please.
Two things.
The money for
special education needs is not reduced. The numbers of people, including resource teachers and special needs assistants, that is not being reduced. But the government is determined that the money and the resources that are being provided for special educational needs, which are considerable, are going to be used for best advantage, are going to be used to the best advantage of the children who need them, and that's why the National Council for Special Education has been asked to develop the best possible use of both the money and the people who are dedicated to providing supports to children with special educational needs.
Thank you, Taoiseach. Now call on Deputy Mattie McGrath. Order, please.
Taoiseach, last November, undercover investigators revealed that Irish Family Planning Association clinics and other clinics, which are overseen and funded by the HSE's Crisis Pregnancy Programme, were involved in actively encouraging women in crisis pregnancy a situation to mislead and lie to their doctors about their abortions if complications were to arise after the abortion procedure. The advice was described at the time as reckless and dangerous. Professor Sam Coulter-Smith said that at the time that this investigation became public, that he was aware of cases where women had died because they didn't tell their doctors they had had an abortion. It is very disturbing that such poor advice would be given to Irish women in crisis pregnancy at a time when they are vulnerable and need appropriate advice more than ever, Taoiseach. The finding was just one of a number of disturbing findings which were revealed in the investigation. The investigation also found that the Irish Family Planning Association, in particular, was in breach of several provisions of the 1995 Abortion Information Act. And it appears that this legislation was being breached on a wide scale. This reflected a high level of contempt for the health and well-being, not to mention the law of the land. Following on from this investigation, a so-called independent inquiry was established by the HSE and announced by Mr Tony O'Brien, head of the HSE, and I might add former head of the said Irish Family Planning Association. The inquiry was to be chaired by Mrs Bridget McManus, former Secretary General of the Department of Education and Science. Taoiseach, following on from a parliamentary question this week from Deputy Terence Flanagan, the answer seems that the investigation and the inquiry appears to have been downgraded now to an audit, something entirely different. The inquiry was established in November 2012, and 7 months later, no significant progress appears to have been made.
Thank you.
And we are told that the report will be finalised within the next 7 to 8 weeks. Can you explain the delay in this investigation, Taoiseach, given the seriousness of the wrongdoing and endangerment of women's health that the undercover investigation revealed? And can you explain why the inquiry has been downgraded to become, what we're told now, an audit? Were the people giving this dangerous information suspended? I believe they should have been, or at the very least some action should have been taken. Was any part of the 3 million HSE funding to the offending agencies withdrawn or withheld?
Thank you, Deputy.
And if not, why not? And why is the HSE a state-funded agency which has given out life-endangering and inaccurate information to vulnerable women and girls in crisis pregnancy, still receiving money, when other HSE programmes and many other programmes that we've seen this morning are being targeted? And finally, Taoiseach, can you tell us what is the exact status of this investigation into the state-funded crisis pregnancy counselling services?
Thank you, Deputy. Taoiseach.
Well, the Deputy is asking me to give information in relation to an investigation that is still underway. I couldn't possibly do that, nor indeed could I prejudice, nor indeed should he prejudice the outcome of any inquiry or any investigation that is taking place. We will clearly have to await the outcome of the investigation, and I would remind the Deputy that, of course, there is provision, there is legislative provision for the provision of information to women in crisis pregnancies, and that is in line with the constitutional position and the referendum that was held on that issue some time ago.
Grant?
Well, I mean, I'm not trying to prejudice any investigation. I'm trying to tarnish to deal with a situation that we're promised an investigation. We were told there's been an investigation, and we were told who was to head it up. In reply to a parliamentary question during the week, we're told it's now an audit, and it's 7-8 months later. What hope can any of us have about the sincerity of this government's claims when it speaks about championing women's health, when it has done nothing to effectively address the situation I have outlined today? None whatsoever. All false promises and misleading information. We need to stop fooling ourselves. If we think that we are having a real debate about protecting women's lives and health at the moment, the bill being introduced today, stop fooling yourselves, because you're not fooling me anymore, a large majority of the public. Why has the Minister for Health not made a statement on this? The Minister was quick, and rightly so, to make statements on the abuses within other state-funded health services, such as nursing homes. Why the silence on this topic particularly, at this time when the government says it wants to do the best for women and to protect women's lives and their health? The silence from the HSE since the initial Irish Independent expose of wrongdoing highlights the point I'm making. And I compliment the people who did this undercover check-out, and indeed Ms. Jim O'Doherty. We can also be selective in our concern for women. We cannot be selective. The Irish public are becoming more and more aware of what is going on, and in the interest of democracy, the colossal double standards which seem to be underpinning the debate have to stop. Women and girls in pregnancy deserve better from our government. The question I have asked, and the Minister, the question I have asked, I didn't get the answer. Where is the inquiry? Where is the inquiry? Where is it at? It's now an audit. And why is Mr. Tony O'Brien, why was he appointed CEO, and why is, when he was involved in this agency before?
Thank you, Deputy.
You might answer those questions, please.
Taoiseach, final reply on this.
Well, all I can say is that the Crisis Pregnancy Agency is doing a very good job providing support to women in crisis pregnancies. The Doyle question that the Deputy refers to was replied to by the Minister for Health. If there are other issues arising from that question, I'm sure that further questions can be tabled to the Minister on it. I think it is. Well, there isn't a delay, and no, there isn't, and you well know that. And may I, you know, there is information and there is support and there is advice that is provided to women in crisis pregnancies, as should be the case. There is a crisis pregnancy agency which has responsibility for the provision of advice and information to women in crisis pregnancies. It works within the aegis of the Department of Health, and it is doing a very fine job. And I don't think it is fair for Deputy McGrath to impugn either those who are working in the agency or indeed in any other agency by prejudging the outcome of any investigation, audit, inquiry, whatever you might want to call it. You should at least await the outcome of that before making the kind of allegations or insinuations that you are making in the course of your question here this morning.
That concludes leaders.